But if what you're passionate about is not putting money on the table, like you can only be passionate about it for so long. It's not about the destination. It's literally about the journey. It's the whole purpose of it, right? Give yourself the tools and put the things in place so that you can find happiness and you can find positivity in little moments. It's not that there aren't hard days, and it's not like there's not hard seasons of your life, because there will be. Like, you're not going to wake up every day and feel great. And I'll tell you right now, like, the solution is to do things. Do things until something works, or until something doesn't work.
Hey, I'm Joe Mulliken, and this is Life Mentored. I'm super excited about today's episode with Freeman Beals. It is one of those things where we talk about positive psychology and we talk about that toxic positivity. And in so much of our conversation, Freeman talks about positive psychology and that positivity. But the thing that I love so much about the time that we got to spend together is that it's not about the toxic part. It's not about the be happy, just choose. It's about making the choice to recognize that there's beautiful things that happen. As we continue down this path and this journey, like, we've been sold this lie that, like, our stories don't matter, and that where we're at, we're alone. We're somehow unique in where we're at, and no one else gets it. No one else will know. And what I love in this time that we spend together is we both kind of talk about, like, there's times that both of us have been in the struggle, whether it's financial, work, whether it's anything else. And I think there's something beautiful about being able to have the conversation about that while still laughing and having joy about the fact that, hey, we can be in that and we can still find gratitude, and we can still find some things that are the wins, that are the joys. And I love, you'll hear his talk and his story about being on the rapids and taking the river. And man, just what a cool background he has from being a whitewater instructor and growing up on the river to working in tech to buying a bus with his wife driving down the road. At the end of the day, I think one of the things that I took away and that I loved the most from the time I spent with him is just that challenge of, hey, what are you doing that builds the values that you have, that helps to move you forward, that helps to bring joy and positivity in your life? And there's a lot of things for me right now that I'm reflecting on after having a conversation with him. And in a week, I got to send him a note after a little challenge he gives. So I'm super excited for you to listen and to spend some time with Freeman. I hope you enjoy our conversation. I hope you enjoy this time together. And with that, I'm Joe Mulliken. I love that you're taking this journey with me. This is Life Mentored, and this is and his story, because his story matters, my story matters, and so does yours. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Well, hey man, I'm stoked, Freeman, that we get a chance here to hang out. It's, I think this is probably the first podcast where somebody has a similar number of tattoos to me on the podcast. So I know we were joking before, just kind of about that. So, but hey, I'm super excited that you're on here. I know we've kind of gotten to know each other a little bit through LinkedIn, through Outliers, through some of the stuff that goes on with that. And social media sometimes gets, it's got its negative sides, but it also has its parts where it helps to build community. And so, as we talk about that, and I say it, like, this is going to get posted on social media too, right? So, but if you could just, like, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then I'm gonna give you the floor, man, just to share your story.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Joe. It's great to be here. I mean, as somebody who has played the podcasting game, and I'm always happy to support podcasters, right? And we've chatted earlier about kind of why you're doing this, and I think it's super beneficial to people to hear real stories, from real people, like you said, right? It's so much easier to connect and feels more authentic than blowing it off from some millionaire who's like, yeah, okay, but you don't deal with, you're not a parent of 3 and struggling financially or whatever, right?
Right.
So yeah, thanks, Joe. I appreciate the chance to be here, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess a little bit about me. I'll give you the quick backstory. I grew up in a small rural Canadian town. My parents started a whitewater rafting company when I was super young, so I grew up pretty much, my summers were on the rivers in that business, kind of helping it grow. I was in tourism for over a decade until I decided that, well over a decade until I decided that I was going to pivot careers, and I pivoted into the tech space, kind of moved into that, got into psychology, dove so deep down the rabbit hole of positive psychology. I got lost.
Yeah.
But I love it, and I still am very, very passionate about that space. That carried me into marketing and sales and the startup space, and kind of through that journey, and yeah, to where I am now, which is very much sort of a weird transition space. Kind of feel like in
Yeah.
limbo almost. So
Well, I think that's one of the cool parts, right? Like we get to go through life, and the story never gets, like, I've got a semicolon, like, right, like it's that there's never a period until there's a period, right? Like
hmm
it's just a new iteration of it. And I can say for having watched and see the stuff you post and watch your journey and some of that too. Like when you talk about positive psychology and you talk about that, like, man, you emanate joy, and I know it's in the background, like good vibes and that positivity, but in the least toxic positive way, in the most authentic and most like, hey, like I'm just choosing today to have joy and to be happy. And so huge kudos out to you, man. It's a huge encouragement for me to see that, and to do that. And like whitewater rafting, man, tell me about like that journey.
yeah, man. I mean, first, thanks so much. I do appreciate that. It's something that I've always been drawn to, is to not be that high level of, that over the top, right? I'm very much a fan of
Yeah.
realistic positivity. So thank you for, seeing and appreciating that. Wow, whitewater rafting is such an interesting background and kind of career to have. I'm now actually writing more about really how much growing up on the river and spending time on the river has taught me about life. There's a credible amount of connection between those two areas. And now that I get older, I look back at those times that I spent on the river. I'm like, holy cow! Like, I've learned so much about life through these weird micro interactions with the river, right? I mean, it was
Yeah.
amazing when I was younger to do that life where people would come out, and I have people all the time being like, "Oh, this has got to be such a dream job. You must love what you do." And I did. I mean, I was hugely passionate about the industry, still am. But when I was younger, I definitely saw myself being a raft guide forever. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, this is it. This is the thing that I'm born to do. And not to, toot my own horn and bang my own bell, but I'm good at it. I'm a very
Yeah.
talented guide, and I'm really good on the river. I mean, you spend that much time doing something, you're gonna get good at it.
Right, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, and I still love it. Like, don't get me wrong, I still get on the river. I just do it for myself now, and less of a commercial aspect. Um, but it is. I mean, people would tell you all the time, like, oh, you're out here living your life, doing what you want to do. Um, and so it was weird because I was almost like I was checking all the life boxes. Certainly a younger person. So it's
Yeah.
weird then to transition out of it. Like, it seems strange
Yeah.
to me looking back now to go, well, why did I leave that? But and I think this is like to be very authentic and blunt. It's like, these are decisions that you kind of have to make, right? You need to look at the longevity of something and go, like, I looked at it and I can't afford to raise a family and live a full adult life as a whitewater rafting guy. It's just not feasible in that industry, unfortunately. I hope it changes here as things move forward, but it's just not feasible. So I think that's, to kind of come around to I think what, this podcast is trying to do, is to show that real life side of things, right? We're
Right.
taught, I'm sure you were, as right, that whole chase your passion thing, do what you feel passionate about. And it's like, but if what you're passionate about is not putting money on the table, like, you can only be passionate about it for so long. So
Well, and
finding that balance in life is hard.
it's kind of crazy too, right? Because like I stepped away from being a school superintendent a year ago, and now
Mm.
I'm back teaching. And some people would look at and go like, "Oh, it's like you took a huge step back." No, like I'm doing something that I'm genuinely so passionate about. I love it, like every single moment of it. No matter how the kids are, like I love being able to do it. But again, it was one of those decisions where it was like I could be a real good superintendent, or I'd be a good dad and work on me.
Mm.
And teaching still pays the bills, but I had to make that decision. Like I got to, like you said, like you get those weird things as you grow up and you become an adult where you're like, we got to make decisions that maybe aren't the decisions that we look at and go like, this is what makes sense, right? But this is what needs to be done. So, um, Yeah, man. Tell me a little bit about like your journey, like a little bit about your story and um, kind of what's gotten you to where you are now.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of, to your point, like what you just talked about there, that like, what decisions you're making and stuff like that, right? And I think a big thing that I've been reflecting on a lot recently is like it's very hard to tell what the right decision was. And I think even if you think it was the right decision, it in retrospect may not have been or may not have been, or it's so hard to tell that. And when I look back at my journey, it's funny because it certainly looks like there are places that might look like step backs or they look like pivots, right? But it's so hard to see that looking forward. You only ever see it looking back. That's the famous Steve Jobs quote about
Right.
connecting the dots, right? Um, so it's a balance of exploring and making the right decisions. My path has always been really interesting, and it's recently found me almost back into tourism again. Like I'm feeling that passion for it again, but in more of like a consulting kind of business aspect, less of the sort of hands on the
Yeah.
ground, doing the guiding aspect, right? But my journey was I've always been a very like make big moves kind of person. Um, like it was like I go all in. I'm an all in kind of person. I'm like, okay, like I don't just put a toe in, I jump.
Yeah.
And that's certainly been
Right.
for bad and for good in a lot of my life. I've worked with, so like when I got out of, just to give a few examples of that, like when I got out of the tourism industry, we moved closer to the big city to be closer to tech jobs and stuff like that. And I, did a full 6 months user experience design course, looked for work for that. I was like just on the precipice of doing some interviews for some big companies in the city. And this guy like that I meet, at a networking event, he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got this like marketing agency that, I want to kind of keep going off the ground, but I've got this magazine that I'm also doing. Like, do you want to jump on board and like help manage that, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Yeah, cool. This sounds like a great opportunity." Right. And I dove head first, right? I canceled my interviews. I, pivoted all my personal branding online to be part of this company that I'd done no research on. And, I grinded that for a few months with this guy and didn't see a lot of the red flags that I
Yeah.
that fell apart. And there was, our first proper client wasn't getting the results that he was supposed to get, and I was not being able
Yeah.
to see behind the curtain. I was just the middleman that was going, clients going, "Hey, why don't we have this?" And no, my partner's like, "Oh yeah, blah 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 blah." I was like, "I can't work like this, man. Like I can't not fulfill
Right.
obligations when we set them through." So that fell through, and that's like an example of diving in head first and it not working. But then I've got examples of that, working. Like when me and my wife were just recently together, we were taking a road trip and we came across a school bus, and we've been looking to buy a van or a school bus for a long time. And on a whim, we dropped a few $1,000s and bought a school bus and converted it into a tiny home to live into for 2 years.
That's
And that was
awesome.
great. Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
I've had somebody ask me before, they're like, "Oh, would you continue to do stuff like that?" And I'm like, yeah, because the payoffs are worth it, right? And you're gonna make mistakes, and that's part of life. And sometimes they hurt more than others. But I think not going kind of all in on things is hard. It's hard for me, especially. I have
Yeah.
a hard time doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And it's cool and interesting to me, like as you're saying that, like I talked to some people this morning about this idea, like that we have to stop worrying about being right and just worrying about doing what we believe is right.
Mm.
And I think what you just said, right, like is just you go in head first, you do what you believe is right in that moment, because hindsight's always 2020,
Hmm.
right? Because it could hit big, it could not.
Yeah. Yep. It's a hard thing to balance for sure. Because I think that certainly as you get older too, it becomes, and this is, a little bit of real talk. Like when you're young and you're in your early 20s or whatever like that, or I always say regardless of age, but when you're at a point in your life where you have no kind of responsibilities in a sense, right? Like when I was when I was younger, I had a hard time having a cell phone because I was like, nah, it's too much. There, I can't be, solidified to a phone plan. Like, what is this?
Right.
And I used to
Right.
travel like that. I used to just like, out of high school, I traveled to Australia, and I had a flight in and a flight out, and that was my only set of plans. I didn't know where I was spending the night when I landed in the Sydney airport, right? That's how I was like, oh, I'll figure it out when I get there. And I could do that when I was 18, 20, right? Um, but now with a kid and a wife and a mortgage, stuff like that, I think it changes your ability to jump, with both feet. It makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
When you do, it makes the landing either hurt more or pay off bigger, right? The risk
Yeah.
levels are higher, and you have to adjust for that.
What so like as you're talking about that, I know you talked about like lessons you learned on the river and like things that you tie into life. So like it just makes me think like what do you see as like those connections there as you
Mm.
have gotten older, you have, wife, kid, you know, and now you're looking and those risks are bigger and the rewards are bigger, but now you got two more people on the boat that you got to
Yeah.
watch too.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I could dive right into this metaphor and say it's a lot like the difference between whitewater kayaking and commercial guiding a raft, right? Like when you're in a kayak by yourself in the river, you can afford to take big risks. You can huck a big waterfall, and you can do those types of things. But when you have a boat full of, you know, us family, right? Which I have taken families on the river with kids as low as, 4, 6 years old, right? You have to approach your risk calculations differently. And
Yeah.
it's not that you can't take risk, but there are different levels of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, you have to choose different rivers, different lines. I will say the one thing that like I was taught by the river that I think still stands very, very true in life is that you have to make a decision of the direction you're going to head in, right? You're like, okay, I'm going that way. And whether that be I'm going through that line, whatever. So you have a plan, right? You're like, yep, this is the way that we're going to go. These are the rapids we want to hit. That's the line I'm going to take for the next 300 meters. But you also have to be acutely aware that that could change. So you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, that is the line, but being steadfast on that particular line can end badly, right? If you catch a rock the wrong way, if the current does something funny. So you have to be willing and plan to adapt and be agile enough that you're still going the direction you think that you're trying to get to, but that
Yeah.
you're not steadfast on that, right? And if something goes
Yeah.
awry or if something seems off, that you can adjust and pivot slightly. Like that's one of the biggest lessons that being on the river taught me, right? Because I've seen guides who were like, yeah, I'm going that way regardless of what happens. And then, shit hits the fan and bad things happen because they don't adjust,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Where making those minute adjustments are hard. And sometimes that means hitting the brakes, right? I gotta hold on. Like this, things are so off that I gotta get off the river because if I keep moving down the river, like bad shit's gonna happen. So let's get off the river and let's walk down shore and let's see what's going on and let's scout it out and let's make a new plan and then get back in and then rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah.
That was such a big lesson that the river taught me. I think that I didn't realize until I was older.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think we probably both have friends that we watched do that, right? That just stick steadfast to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they stick steadfast to it, it's like, ooh, like I'm watching. And
Yeah.
I know that I've been in that situation where even for me, like I've stuck so steadfast to something where I watch, and then I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Mm.
I probably should have pivoted a little earlier than I did. Um, and then, but again, it's one of those things where like you hindsight's 2020. You
Totally.
event plus response is the outcome, right? We forget that the outcome is the next event, and so we have to adjust to whatever there and respond to whatever it is, and we get to it, right? And um, where have you seen like it? So as you talk about doing that, like where do you see some of those things, like those applications in life? Like talk to me about like family, all that stuff. Like
Mm.
how do you navigate some of that stuff with that mentality of like, hey, I want to make big jumps. I want to like I don't want to do class 2. I don't want to, you know, just
Mm.
go down and bounce a little bit. I want to jump in class 5 and pull all in and go. How do you navigate some of that stuff with like now with family with all that stuff and be able to kind of, because I know when you talk about that positive psychology, for me at least, when I can't make that jump, like that's where shame shows up for me.
Mm.
And that's where, like, for me, shame starts to go, well, you made that decision back then, which now screwed you now. And I know that's not where I want to live.
Mm.
So how do you navigate that?
That's such a good question. A lot of you know, it's where your energy goes, I think, is a hard thing, right? And this is talked a lot about, but it's harder to do. And I'll kind of get down into one of the things that I truly believe about positive psychology that's really beneficial, but it's what you focus on, right? So there's a huge, massive lesson in all this that's like, if you only look for, the shit, all you're going to see is the shit, right? And that's easy for our brains to do because it's the way they're designed, right? So I am a firm believer in this fact that positive psychology doesn't end at like, oh, just think better, right? Oh, just only think of the good things. You know what I mean? Like that's completely just not a realistic thing to tell people. And it's frustrating, honestly, for people, right? Like,
Right.
oh, just be happy. Choose to be happy. Like, choose to build a house doesn't mean you have
Yeah.
a house. You still got to build the damn house.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm a big proponent of like, you have to put the things in place that allow you to do those types of things. And they're basic things, right? There's things like, journal at night, which is sometimes as easy as writing 3 positive things down on a piece of paper before you go to bed, right? You do that, you're starting
Yeah.
to rewire your brain to look for good things that happen during the day. And it's easy to do, right? It's things like when you get up in the morning, if you have time, go for a short walk, right? If you're not feeling great, get up, do some push-ups, do some squats, right? Like this is back to that whole thing that talk about like this realistic positivity thing where it's not just, oh, be happy, be good. It's like, okay, what can you do in your life that will make things better, that will make things good? So to really answer your question about how do you manage like these big things, so I'm the same way, Joe, and I think that we probably connect on this thing where it's like, I still want to take big jumps, but I almost can't, right?
Right.
When you're like, oh, but like I still want to run the class 5, and it's like, well, the truth is that you can't. You know what I mean? Like you can't go run the
Yeah.
class 5 anymore. You can't remortgage your house and start a startup. I mean, you can. Don't get me wrong. And this is a big thing that I'll sidebar it a little bit here. That I think we run into right now with the amount of information we have access to is you'll find evidence on both sides of this equation. You'll find evidence that says, yeah, remortgage your house and go in on your startup. You'll find evidence that says, no, land a solid job and do a side hustle. A lot of it's going to be figuring out what works with you. And I think what a lot of people don't do, and I encourage people to do this if they're in a relationship or not in a relationship, but if you're in a relationship, you should do it with your partner. You need to figure out what your values are, and those are what steer you. And if you don't know what those are, then it's impossible to feel if you're making the right decision or not. If you're like, hey, as an individual or as a couple, like we want to value our time with our children, or we want to value, and we want to value financial stability, or we want to value, we value high risk, high reward, right? We value having a fancy car. We value putting our kids in the best education system, or we value homeschooling our kids, right? Like, I'm not saying one side is better than the other one. I'm just saying you need to understand yourself. What are my guiding principles and values? And then you can just look at those when you have to make decisions, right? You go, okay, I'm going to lay this stuff out on paper, which, by the way, do with every big decision, write some shit down because we think that our
Right.
brains can do everything.
Right.
But like,
No.
man, like you can't do long multiplication in your brain. You shouldn't try to figure out big life changes. Okay. Like that's that simple.
Right.
So write that shit
Yeah.
down, look at your principles, go, okay, what aligns with our values and stuff like that. And then that will help guide your decision. And then if you're like, and this is big, and this is why I think this is big, because then if you make the wrong decision, if it was in line with your values, you can go, okay, yes, it was the wrong decision, but it was with our values, which means that part
Oh
of it
yeah.
had to be right. So
Yeah.
then, okay,
And
what
that's
part of
the
it was right, and then learn from there and continue
yeah.
going.
Hell yeah, man. That's where like that doing right over being right. Right? Like if I put my head down at night and I said, "Hey, I did what I believed was right," and get my ass kicked for it, okay. But if I tried, and this has been something I've had to work on just because of but if I tried to do what I thought other people thought was right, what I thought they wanted, what I thought, and then it wasn't still, that's when it's miserable. And I can tell you, like right now, for me, financial stability is something that has not been one of my values before, but is. But it's not like it's not a temptation. I got to sell my car because there's 2 names on it and one of them's got to come off. But I got to sell my car. I was laying in bed last night on Carvana. I was ready to push the button and buy a car last night. But I also know that I try to remind myself, don't make a decision. Don't make decisions when you're sad, mad, tired, or hungry. And I can tell you, I was sad and I was tired. And I don't think I was hungry, but at 1 o'clock in the morning, I think we're all hungry for a Pop Tart. But right? Like it just was one of those things where it was one of the first times where like I kind of got done and set my phone down. And I was like, yeah, like, I need to get that thing.
Mm.
I got stuff in my garage right now. Like I got tons of stuff. Like I got pictures, I got furniture, but it's not coming in here right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's slowly moving because it's like you said, it's like what are the values? And right now, simplicity and it is a big value. And it's finding that way to do it. And like you said, and one thing that I love as you talk through some of this stuff is like to me, it just sounds like it's find your brand, right? It's not, hey, go work out. That'll make you feel better. Like I think I've said it in a podcast before. I'm 6'6", like almost 300 pounds. If I go work out, I'm not throwing the weight that everybody else is throwing in the gym. That's going to make me even more insecure.
Mm.
So I don't want to go to the gym when I'm feeling down, when I'm doing that. I got to find my brand for what works, right? And Dan Cox, who was just on the podcast not too long ago and came out shortly before, talked about how his was it's running and start before you're ready. And he's like, it was just to start. I put my shoes next to the bed. That's what I had to do. I had to put my shoes next to the bed, and it's I think as you talk about that positive psychology and doing that, I love hearing you talk about and sharing like it's really just building an environment in a container and a space that's safe and that does bring joy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we both know money can buy happiness. Like money buys a jet ski, and I've never been sat on a jet ski. I don't want to own one. Someone else can own it for me, but it's fleeting, right? Like going down, like I went whitewater rafting. It's been a long time, man. But like I was probably one of those 6-year-old, 12-year-olds or whatever in the back of the boat that you were guiding. But that adrenaline rush though is still fleeting,
Mm.
right? Because then you get done, and then what?
Mm-hmm.
Now what? And I think that I've had to learn, being divorced, single dad, different things like that. Like I got to learn that like that adrenaline rush, that fleeting happiness for me can't be the first thing that I
Mm.
focus on.
Yeah, there's two really big points in here that I want to address, and one of them is to do with what you're talking about, this whole fleeting thing. So there's a really powerful thing that I've been recently thinking about. It's called destination happiness. So it's this
Yeah.
idea where like, okay, once I get to once I have this, once that's happening, but then I'll be happy. And it's such a dangerous spot to sit in. And to wrap back into this whole river thing, it's funny because I think on a whitewater raft trip or any river trip, honestly, like as I get older, it's not just about whitewater and adrenaline, right? Like just being out in the mountains is just an amazing feeling, being on the water. But the cool thing about being on the water is that you don't want to get to the end. It's not about the destination. It's literally about the journey. It's the
Yeah.
whole purpose of it, right? Like the
Yeah.
ending is where you have to get back in your car and go back to reality. That's no fun, right?
Right.
And that's where you really get to enjoy life and live it, right? And I think that we get so caught up in life trying to get back to the car again. It's like that's not the point,
Man.
right? And it's tough, right? Don't get me wrong. Like I've been caught. I'm not going to say I'm perfect. I've been caught playing destination happiness before, right? Once I land this job,
Yeah.
once I have that car, et cetera, right? So learning to love that journey is so important, and it comes back to that like give yourself the tools and put the things in place so that you can find happiness and you can find positivity in little moments, right? Which is exactly the same thing as putting your shoes by the front door so that you go running in the morning, right? Put your journal beside your bed with a pen so that you write in the morning. Put the glass of water beside the sink. So the first thing you do is have a cold glass of water, right? Like have your friend on your contact on your home screen so that you call them on Wednesday afternoon when you've agreed to call them, right? These are the little things that you can do to put things in place to make sure that your positivity comes through. But I think there's an interesting thing, and I want to fly in the face of this because I think that a lot of times when it comes to things like financials, and I think because a lot of big podcasts, and the reason I want to bring this up is like a lot of big podcasts are done with people who don't have financial problems. And, you hear this, and I mean, and you said it right. Oh, like, money doesn't buy happiness. And like, I mean, but it does, right? And the lack of money can certainly bring unhappiness. right? Um, Especially if the lack of money is getting in the way of your values, right?
Yeah.
So if one of your values is to have safety and security for your family, financials are tied to that. And that's why it's so
Right.
important. You have to look at those values when you're making decisions, because if that's the value, and if one of the decisions is, X number of money for this or this amount of risk for that, like that comes into that, right? And like
Yeah.
it also comes, and the other thing that I want to touch on in there lastly is like your values need to and will shift as you go, right? To your back, like your brand will change, and it should,
Yeah.
right? When you have a kid,
Yeah.
your values are going to change, right?
For sure.
When you start
Yeah.
a business, your values are going to change. When you find the place that you
Yeah.
really want to live, your values will change. When you find a new hobby, like, so don't go, okay, yeah, these are my values, they're locked in stone. Like, no, right? Use them as guiding beacons. When you make a decision that feels wrong, go back and question a value. Go, okay, well, do I actually value that? Or did I value that 5 years ago and now I don't, right? It needs to be a constant kind of recheck in, right? I mean, that's how businesses work, right? Businesses don't have one strategy for 5 years. They reevaluate every quarter. You should probably be doing the same
Yeah.
thing with your life.
Right. And yeah, man. And I think that's so powerful. One, like, the financial part of it, right? Like, there's like there were times like I was putting child support on credit cards
Mm-hmm.
when I was doing consulting stuff because things were drying up. And like there were times where like and I talk about it in one of the teasers, like we tell people don't talk about finance, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion. But we know between like 24 and like 44, one of the leading causes of suicide is financial instability and financial issues.
Mm-hmm.
But we've told people don't talk about this, feel shame about it, don't bring it up, don't ask. And so then when it comes to that place where it's like someone needs to ask for help, someone needs to ask for, they need to understand, they feel alone in it because, and truly, man, there were times where I was sitting going like, man, I'm a failure. Like I walked away from a superintendent job that paid real good money. And now I'm putting child support on a credit card, like eating refried beans and like, uh, what am I doing?
Mm.
And those are those moments where your mind, like where that positivity starts to get hard, right? And you got to really be intentional about, and in those times, it was some close friends. It was like me in therapy. It was,
Mm-hmm.
my reminders of my girls. It was, the things like that that kind of kept things going. And I think you hit it right on the head with that, man, that like so many times people listen to podcasts or do things and, hear about all these things. So it's true, right? Like money can buy a sense of happiness. What it doesn't buy is peace or joy,
Mm-hmm.
but it does provide a sense of comfort.
100%. Yeah.
And that sense of comfort is hard to undervalue, right? And
Yeah.
I know for both of us, like neither of us are living on the street right now, right? Like, and so I recognize the privilege and the blessing that I have to do, what I'm doing. And like even with the podcast, like this just comes out of my
Mm-hmm.
pocket, right? Like because I find value in it,
Yeah.
right? Like this is this is my passion, and listening to hear your story and um excited for other people to hear that. But I think for me, one of the things that I've taken away from you talking about with like positive psychology and so much of that is that it's just creating safety
Mm.
and making like, and I don't know if that lands with you or if that hits kind of the same, but like for me, that's like one of the things that I hear when you talk about some of those things is like, what am I, and I'm thinking about it right now, like what am I doing to create an environment for me that keeps me safe in my values, that
Mm.
doesn't put me in a place where I'm at risk of jeopardizing one of those values or making a decision that would be in conflict with it, right? Um, because so often we don't like my phone charger. You're talking about like doing different. Like my phone charger sits away from my nightstand now because I have a hatch. I'll leave my phone charger next to my bed because if it does, guess what I'm going to be on, right? So there's no TV in my room now Because if there is, guess what I'm gonna like.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's those like little insidious addictions that we don't think too much of, but all of a sudden add up to a bunch when we don't have control over.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, and I love that. Like, I would challenge you to put your phone even farther away. All right, charge it in the living room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with a ton of people, where they're like, "Oh yeah, but I need my phone for my alarm clock." And I'm like, "Spend $20 and buy a new alarm clock. You don't need your
Right.
phone for your alarm clock, right? Like, get out of here."
Right.
But
Yeah.
like, it's these small things that, and I think you said it really well in there too. It's like those things. It's funny because it's so much of it, we call this like, mental wellness is becoming a big term, right? And I like that term because unlike, it's not unlike, but like fitness, it's easy to not pay attention to your health when you're healthy, but that's when you should be putting the things in place so that when it's hard and like you'll have hard times, you have those things in place, right? And I've learned this lesson myself, right? Like we're certainly in a hard time right now where I'm having to lean on a lot of these things, right? And I know that when I stop journaling, for example, right, if I go like a week and it's like, I'm like, oh, why do I feel so, down and out? It's like, oh, I haven't journaled in like a week. Oh, I should probably I haven't gone to the gym in the morning for like a week. Oh, I should probably, get back to the gym. Because for me, that's a very, it's just something that works, right? And this is why it is important to like two things on this. It's important to put the little things in place, discover what those are. But then, like, you need to be tracking that a little bit because, to your point earlier on, you got to know what works for you. So, if it's why I'm such a huge proponent of journaling, because if you go to the gym for a week, even if you're not doing anything excessive at the gym, even if you're walking on the treadmill, right, and that you journal for that week and you feel better, and then a week goes by, you don't go to the gym and you keep journaling, and you're like, why do I feel worse this week? And you're like, oh, I wasn't at the gym. Okay, I should go. I should go back to the gym.
Right.
I think is a huge part of making sure you get those things done right. And again, it's something that is easy. You don't have to pay a ton of money for things like this, things like journaling and gratitude practices, and but it's different flavors for who you are. You have to find the one that works, right? Like some people will be opposed to journaling. I'm like, okay, well, have you tried taking voice notes on your phone instead? Right? Maybe you don't want to write, and that's fine. Maybe you want to write on paper. Maybe you want to write on an iPad. Maybe you want to do a video vlog to yourself, right? Like just experiment with some shit and see what helps you.
And sometimes it's just like what we're taking in. Earlier you talked about there's so much information that's coming. Like we weren't made to take in that much information, right? And like I'm rolling around here with ADHD, like I'm not made to bring in this much information. I was, joking with someone earlier. They were like, sometimes I miss something with you. And I'm like, you didn't miss anything. The hamster just
was gone already.
Was like he's like 3 wheels down. Sorry. And so, but like I've had to make a conscious effort. Like I don't have any live TV because I don't want live TV. It doesn't serve me at all. And so like, it's finding those little things, right? That like it doesn't benefit, it doesn't serve me, doesn't benefit me, doesn't help, it doesn't help me move. And you talked about like I love the journey and your analogy with the river, man, because it is like you don't want to get off the river. No one wants to get off the river with whitewater rafting, right? Like nobody wants to get off. Like no one wants to get out of the game when they're playing. No one wants to get. But I think so often it's just one mountaintop to another. Like and I used to use the analogy a lot of like life is like pole vaulting for a lot of people. And there's 3 truths, right? Like you sprint every time. And the most dangerous part is trying to go up. And if you go over the bar, the next thing that happens is that you fall incredibly fast. And if you go over the bar, they don't leave it. They raise it. And if you hit the bar, they don't lower it. They leave it. And so often, like we spend that rat race doing that where I'm like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I'll run the marathon and today I'm just going to choose what pair of shoes I'm wearing. Like it might be slippers and I might take a little walk. And today I might be sprinting, right? Like I might be jumping in and I might be running that 100 meter sprint, right? Jumping into that company and doing it. But you're right. Companies do the same thing, right? They do the same thing all the time. As you're talking about, in trying to make sure that they're recognizing what's happening, what they're doing, what's going on. And Uh, man, I love that analogy though on the river. Like finding joy in the journey is like I think like that's where it's at, man.
Yeah. One of the toughest things, though, that I think needs to be recognized, and I feel kind of obligated to say this is like sometimes you need to change the game you're playing or the river you're on, right? And so there's a really cool concept called sunk cost fallacy that people have where you will try to convince yourself of something the more that you do it. And it's why people like end up at a job they hate for 20, 30, 40 years. It's because they're like, wow, but I'm already here, right? I'm already doing this thing.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah,
again, like
pot
you need to go back.
committed.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're committed to it. And like, I could play the same analogy with like the river, right? Where it's like, okay, like this river's not fun anymore. Right. And I've
Right.
lived this, right? Like, there's a reason I stopped guiding because I lost enjoyment in it. Right. And I'll perfectly comfortable saying that. I kind of was like, I'm not enjoying where I am anymore. Right. I need to change something. But the problem with that is, and this is the harsh truth in a lot of this, is that when you stop playing, there is a point in time when you stop playing one game before you start playing another game. And those points are hard. Right. And it's when you're going to have to really lean on a lot of things in your community and who you know and stuff like that. Cause like, that drop feels worse every single time. And I was talking briefly with my wife about this the other night, and it's like, it's easy when you're younger to kind of do those drops because they don't feel as big. Right.
Right.
But then the higher you get, the same type of drop that puts you lower than you were, but not as low as you have been in the past, feels bigger, right? Because of perception. So, you come up, you're like, oh yeah, this is good. And you're like, I don't know, I'm changing the game. And you go to here and you're like, oh, this feels now like you're taking a step back, but you actually haven't because you're still above where you were. Right. So it's reminding yourself of those things and having that gratitude to do that kind of stuff. When something feels like a step backwards, reminding yourself that why am I doing this? Right. Like what's the purpose of it? But I don't want to discredit the fact that like that shit's hard and it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's one of the things that I've always held true with like the way that I talk about positivity. It's like, it's not that there aren't hard days and there's not hard seasons of your life, because there will be. Like, you're not going to wake up every day and feel great, right? You're going to have shit days where you're like, why the hell am I doing this? But it's that overall your trajectory is in a positive manner. And I think that's,
Right.
if you're doing that, you're doing it right.
Right. And I think, man, like I can tell you watching your stuff, listening to you talk, all those things, like you are embodying that
Well, thank you. I
journey,
appreciate that.
that positivity, that joy of the journey. And I see your face, as you post things and the smile that you have on it. And some people, and the people that are watching this on YouTube will see it too, right? But it's like some people see those pictures and people when they're throwing that smile out, and it's like, cool. Like I'm like, thanks for throwing one out. Like, but there's a difference between like that smile and that joy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see it, I know when you're out there, like there's that genuine joy that exists there. And I know that you're doing incredible things for your family, for other people, for your community, for everybody. And I know you talked about like things. There's going to be times that suck. There's going to be times they're shit. And I had a buddy tell me like, it's okay just to say, hey, it's okay to say that it sucks right now.
Yeah.
And it's okay to then have the belief in enough abundance to say that it sucks right now, but there is hope. And I can lift that dumbbell at the same time and believe in both of those things and not just wallow in it sucks, right? So, as we're like, as we're kind of wrapping up, man, like if you were to kind of share with somebody that, is in maybe one of those times that is the suck, that is that, falling back down. If you could go back to your younger self, or if you go back and share with people, because again, at the end of the day, this is about trying to make sure we want people to not feel like they're alone sitting in that suck and that shit. Right. So, I know both of us have been there, and have gone through that and have our ways, but if you were to go back and do that and give advice, what would you share with somebody about that?
Yeah, I think I'll give some advice in like literally where I think some of the best advice is given, you know, in what you're dealing with. And like, I'll be blunt in that I'm certainly in a season of suck right now. I won't get into the semantics of it, but you know, shit's tough right now. And one of the things that helps me get through it is practicing gratitude, and is the biggest thing is doing. And I think that it's easy, and this is the one thing that I wanted to touch on. It's easy now more than ever to get lost in a process of trying to find the right answer. And when you're doing that, and I've learned this more and more as I do stuff, right? Like there is an answer and an argument on any side of the coin that you want to look at. So and oftentimes if people are like me, when you're in a shitty situation, you're like, oh, okay, I'll go see if I can find some solutions to this thing. You're like, okay, I'll try this, I'll do this. And like,
yeah.
But because of how much information we're given right now, and certainly if people are parents, I want this to be extra important to you guys as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'll use a parent metaphor because I think it's a good one. It's like, there are so many different ways to raise your kid. And if you continue to look for like ways that you should do certain things with your kids, like you'll find somebody who's telling you you're doing it wrong. You'll find somebody who's telling you you're doing it right. And the same goes across like things in your life, things in your career, things that you're making financial decisions of, all of these things, right? You'll find people who say, go all in on a business, right? Burn the boats, right? That's a huge thing that say all the time. But you'll find a whole other group of people that say, no, don't burn your boats. Do it as a side hustle until it pays your thing. Both of those things work, right? It depends on what works for you, right? There's things where it's like, oh, you know, sleep train your kid. Don't sleep train your kid, you know, bribe them with vegetables. Don't bribe them with vegetables.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you will
Right.
find an argument for everything. And I think especially when you're in a shit spot, it's easier to just try to find the right answer because you're like, oh, I just want somebody to tell me the solution to this. And I'll tell you right now, like the solution is to do things. Do things until something works or until something doesn't work, and then learn from that thing, right? But like the doing is the hardest part. But it's the part that will give you the answers, because now more than ever, you will find an answer online.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that first step.
So yeah,
it's the hardest one to take.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Joe, too, like, I think, you know, tell somebody, hey, I'm struggling right now with this, right? Can you help me with this first step? I don't know which direction to go, right? Because it's really hard to make that first step by yourself.
Yeah. Well, hey man, I can't express how much I appreciate you spending some time with me today. I know there's things like I'm gonna charge my phone outside in the kitchen tonight.
Do it.
But like there's lots of things that I'm taking away and thinking about after us talking. One last thing before we go, and I'll stick some stuff in the bio. If people want to find you or follow your story or connect with you or do that, where are places that they can find you?
The best spot I'm most active on is LinkedIn. Just look me up at Freeman Beals. And then I have a Substack as well, Leadership Lessons from the River. It's a bit more leadership focused than it is kind of positivity focused, but it's a lot about those life lessons that I've learned on the water. And you can go check those out. If you really want to deep dive into some stuff, there's an older Substack of mine called 365 Positivity, which is a whole different part of my story that we didn't get into today, but you can go explore that as well. But LinkedIn's the best spot to kind of find that information on me. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, it sounds like version 2's got to come out at some point so we can get to that 365 too. But
yeah, there's a whole story in there. So
yeah, and truly, like, you know, one of the reasons that I bring different people on the podcast and have been intentional about who's, you know, on some of these episodes that are coming out in the first, you know, 6 months or so, is that I know that you and the other people are the type of people that if someone does reach out and says, hey, I resonated, I'm going through that shit time, that they're going to get a response back and that you're going to be there too. And so like, I appreciate that. I know that what you shared today is going to resonate with people, man. And I know it resonates with me. So I appreciate you, all that you do. Sincerely appreciate your time hanging out today and taking time away from family and from all that. And, you know, like you said, it's the journey. And, you know, at the end of the day, even if there are some of those shit times, we look back and we can find things that we have gratitude for and that we're grateful for. And,
yeah.
So I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope that everybody that was listening enjoyed it. Any of the contact info for Freeman I'll have in the bio. Reach out to him if you resonated with something, shoot him a message. But I, as always, hope that during this time, if you were able to listen, if you spent time with us, one, I appreciate you doing that as well. But hopefully this helps you to feel a little bit less alone. Hopefully this reminds you that everybody's stories matter. Because if my story matters, if Freeman's story matters, then that means yours does too. And we're not alone. And life's done a lot better in community. And life going down the river on a raft is done a lot better with a full boat than by yourself. So I appreciate you, man.
Can I leave your listeners with one more thing, Joe, before we dip here?
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah.
This is one thing I like to leave people with. I mentioned it briefly, but I want to reiterate it here. If you do one thing after listening to this podcast, it's tonight, write down 3 things that went well the day and do that for a week. And then come back here and tell me what's changed. Do that for a week. Just 3 things. Don't make it hard. Don't make it complicated. Just write 3 things down on a piece of paper every day that went well.
Awesome. Well, you're going to get a message from me in a week. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. Well, hey, I enjoyed this. Love the time together, and looking forward to version 2 when we can jump into 365 too. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody that listened. This is Life Mentored.